Well, good evening and welcome back to the Journey Home program. I'm your host, John Mark Grodi, and once again, we have this great privilege here in EWTN on this show to hear a story of conversion. We hear how another son was led deeper into Christ, into the body of Christ, the church. We're very blessed this evening to be speaking to Deacon Graham Galloway. He's a former Presbyterian who is now a permanent deacon for the Archdiocese of Cincinnati. Graham, thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you.
And
it's a pleasure.
Minute as well. You filled in when we had a spot that
Yes.
opened up with all the travel stuff.
Happy to do it.
That was
meant
great
to be.
have you. And you've got some connections on our staff.
Yes, I do.
To our
Do you
own
admit
Matt
that,
Swaim. We
or
do.
not?
We do.
Okay.
Yeah, we own up to it.
Venerable Matt Swaim,
Yeah.
as we call him. Yeah. Matt and I go back quite a long ways. I worked in radio for a short stint in Catholic radio, Sacred Heart Radio, which is our local station in Cincinnati, and was asked to help out in the news when Anna Mitchell for the Sunrise Morning Show had her first child. So I was kind of that, as he just reminded me, kind of the guinea pig of doing that. I didn't know what I was doing. It was a total learn on the fly.
Yeah.
And they used to call me Graham the Newsman. And Matt will remind me of that. I remember being terrified because I couldn't really read him very well. And as you might know, he's got a little bit of a sense of humor. So I remember I'd say something like, yeah, and I'll shoot it back to Matt for the weather. And he'd say, don't shoot me. Don't shoot me. I'm like, did I offend him? I wasn't sure. So
Yeah, well, you've got
now I know I did.
lots of media experience here, as you're going to talk about later on. Some surprising, some Hollywood in there that we're going to get to.
A little bit.
So, but let's go back to the beginning.
Sure.
Where does your story begin?
Well, grew up in Southern California.
Right.
One of four children to Presbyterian, Scottish Presbyterians. They came fresh off the boat from Scotland. They lived about a block apart in Glasgow, just the edges of Glasgow.
Mm-hmm.
So, my parents would say, oh, it's Bishop Briggs, it's not Glasgow. And the people from Glasgow would say, oh, that's Glasgow. Right. So then they came to America. He was a soccer player. And he was going to come be a soccer star out here, and he was also a civil engineer. And then they went by way of Canada, and then decided to have a kid in every state, it seemed, or they were planning to. And they got to Arizona, where I was born, but then within like 6 weeks, I think, moved to Southern California, Newport Beach, blessed. Looking back, you realize like how lucky you are, So yeah, grew up there. Kind of a sleepy, very quiet, mellow kind of environment. My parents divorced when I was about 3 years old. So it was just my mom and the four of us, and we were kind of a rowdy bunch. Being the youngest, it's kind of led to, as you mentioned, entertainment or acting roots was kind of based on that, because you had to fight. You had to fight the dinner table for just to be recognized. So there was like puns going back and forth all the time. Teasing my mom. Her just having a blast. She'd just
Moms
sit back
love puns,
and
right?
I love them, the best. So she's about 5'0". My brother Scott was like 6'3", and so he'd always do the leaning on her head kind of thing, and she just thought it was the greatest thing. Mm-hmm. So that kind of led to just the need for being able to communicate, to get along, to navigate the craziness. We grew up going to church at a Presbyterian church, St. Mark's. And my father wasn't very active in his religion at all, in his faith. My mom was. My mom, she was everything. I mean, it was one of those things where I just grew up immersed in it without realizing I was. So you had to go to church every Sunday. So mom was kind of a little bit like me, kind of a little last minute. So we're screaming in the car, like down, 5 minutes away, but she's hitting it to the last minute, so we're screaming down to church. She was in the choir. I grew up a choir boy for a short stint. She would be at like 3 a.m. ironing all the stoles, and at that time, they're that crazy, wacky 70s-ish, everything's felt, everything's the wild colors and the hippie guitars, and so we're very involved in our church. We're very involved in anything with ministry, anything with events. We're constantly having ministers over. Either they were visiting and staying with us, or they were searching for their new homes, our new pastors, and they'd stay with us. So it was something that was just really kind of used to,
Yeah.
but I didn't really take it. I don't know if I had a real deep relationship with my faith at that time.
Right.
So that was just kind of my growing up, my faith. I think the closest thing I had to Catholicism was my buddy Matt at the time. It's the only Catholic I knew nothing about the Catholic faith. My only my idea of the Catholic faith was if you're a Catholic, you had to have a nativity, at a nativity setup at
required.
Christmas. Yeah,
Required.
that's it.
Yeah.
And your parish or church had to have like pastel, inside. It was always this like light blue pastel. And then my buddy had like a St. Christopher medal, and that's, I figured all Catholics must have that too. And that's all I knew.
So probably not any real theological sense of the difference or any anti-Catholicism.
No,
It's just another option out there.
I do remember having a conversation briefly with my pastor at our church. He was a good friend of the family. He's a real good man. And I remember asking him about the Catholic faith, and he said something like, well, the one of the biggest differences is the way we view, communion, or we see it as symbolic of Christ's love, of our unity, and they see it, well, they believe that's Jesus, that's really Jesus. And I'm thinking like, that's crazy, but that was about it. And the only other notions I had of Catholicism, Catholics, was from the media, so it was all bullet point stereotypes, but I didn't really take it very seriously.
Sure. We're speaking this evening with Deacon Graham Galloway, a former Presbyterian. So you also have, again, this burgeoning interest in kind of acting, this loud personality. So what happens next with that? Yeah.
Well, oddly enough, like I was very shy growing up, which is, I'm sure it's really hard to believe, but yeah.
I'm not seeing it, but yeah.
So
take your word
I was
for it.
really painfully shy, but I always knew, I had a big imagination. My mom worked full time, divorced, so didn't get a lot of time with her. So my imagination was running wild, and coming home from the bus stop, I would imagine myself as like I was a school kid, but I was also a secret agent, and so I'm just like dodging spies that would be ready to jump out of the bushes or kill me, or assassin ninjas, and so I was always active in that, and always knew that I was going to be an actor. I just thought it's just inevitable. I just know that's what I meant to do. So I wouldn't audition for things. I was too scared, but I just knew that's what I would do. And that just kind of evolved throughout, my life of just, there was always a part of that. So I started to do a little bit, but I was just too scared to audition for, theater at school at the time. And I did get involved more with like just kind of ministries, if you will, retreats. We used to go every year to a place, it was a Presbyterian retreat center. It's in Abiquiu, New Mexico, called Ghost Ranch. Ghost Ranch is one of the most beautiful places on earth. You want to talk God's country, you go out there in New Mexico. So it's like right outside of Santa Fe. And, Georgia O'Keeffe had a studio out there. So it was very famous, the Painted Desert, all that. And I remember going out there, and there was just this sense, this vastness, of God's creation. And it was just a reminder for me in a subtle way of just like how small I am, how small we are, how vast God is. And there's just that sense of God's paternity and this just sounds weird. I don't know how I knew it, but I just could feel his love, could feel just that infinite love, that just sense of his vastness. And there was comfort there, although I didn't really know, I didn't know what I didn't know. And I was just kind of going along with it. And that kind of started to change as I grew through my teen years. So a lot of things were going on. Everybody's getting out of the house, and my siblings, my brother's now going off to college. So it was just me. My mom and I weren't really getting along too well. At the time, my dad had already remarried, so we had this whole new family there. And it was kind of crazy at that time. And so my mom and I weren't really doing so hot. I got it in my head that, I was really unhappy. She was getting remarried again, so this was going to be her third. The second one didn't work out so well. It was pretty verbally abusive to everybody. So she's about to get married again. I'm 15. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm learning about who I am. And so I decided to get this great idea. I'm going to run away from home. So I get everything packed up. I'm just leaving. And I tell my mom I'm leaving. I had nowhere to go. My sister, God bless her, she was only like 7 years older than me, so just newly married, and she took me in. They took me in, so I finished off my sophomore year then, and then I ended up going up to LA with my dad. My dad lived in Bel Air, which was, fancy schmancy, very different. Now I went from, sleepy kind of beach town, and I don't know if you've experienced this, going from something like that to all of a sudden you're in Los Angeles and it's all mixed everything, and it was wild, and it was like this new beginning for me. I had a stepsister who was the same age, so we were going to the same, classes in school, and she's a cheerleader, and so we have all this, instant social life, and it was pretty wild. At that time, I think I fancied myself a rebel. So I remember at the dinner table telling my stepmom and dad that, you know what, I'm pretty much an atheist, and my stepmom's like, oh! And, like, how dare you? So I didn't mean it. I was just trying to be cool.
Yeah.
And so not long after that, I started joining my stepsister at the high school, junior high school youth group at the local Presbyterian church, which is Bel Air Presbyterian. And it was very famous for having Ronald Reagan. Ronald Reagan was a parishioner. They had a very charismatic pastor who was like a football superhero at UCLA. So it was just so different for me. And then that youth group really kind of helped bring me out of my shell, as well as the school now, just bring me out of my shell. And I just felt kind of at home, we're I don't know, getting into Christian music at the time, fellow Christians, and it's cool to be nerdy and talk about, your faith with others of that age. We're still nutty kids, but, at least there's that understanding of God and being able to turn to God. I remember sitting in a parking lot after one of the the meetings with the youth pastor, and he's, invited me to invite Christ into my heart, the sinner's prayer.
Right.
So I remember doing that, like, God, I do want you in my heart. And for a while there, I really, my later teen years really attempted to live that life, which is not easy as a teen, because you've got, like, let's do that. And then they're beer bonging, in the parking lot over. So it was a struggle, but it was something I was really grateful for.
Yeah.
In high school.
Well, to have that experience, right? That was really probably the first time that it had become a little bit more internal, right? A desire of your heart in a different way. So even if it didn't take, right, it's like this checkpoint that you're looking back to and saying something happened there. Something was going on.
Yeah, like I was kind of mentioning earlier, is that it was almost something you just took for granted. It was just something we did. We had to go to church. My other siblings were like, ugh, and I think to this day maybe I'm one of the fewer, still, very active in my faith, and I think part of that was for them was that feeling of you've got to do this, you must, but I started growing in my faith there, and it really kind of catapulted me into, my college years. So at that time, I also knew that, hey, I'm going to be an actor. I love acting. So, towards the end of high school and into college, I started, got an agent, started taking classes and going to the gurus, the acting world, and of course, the prerequisite working in restaurants. So I probably hit just about any job you can imagine, during my early 20s, actually getting involved more in film and TV at that time, and things were starting to kind of trickle in, and I was just feeling the life.
What was your motive going forward? Like, were you really drawn to the art itself? Like, you just wanted to act? Was that kind of the main, what was the passion there that was moving you forward?
Yeah, it's really funny that you say that. So there's a part of me just always knew.
Yeah.
And out in Los Angeles, they're a dime a dozen. Everybody's an actor. So the ones, and people will come to me today and they'll be like, hey, my daughter or son wants to be an actor. They want to talk to you. My first thing I'll say is, like, you have to eat this. You have to breathe it, and live it. And then you've got a chance to have an enjoyable, successful career. Because if you don't, there's so many people, the most ridiculously talented people around. I wasn't necessarily one of them. I was talented, but some of these people were just ridiculous, and yet, frustrated and ended up leaving or coming back, to Ohio or what have you. So for me, it was just a knowing, and it was also the lifestyle. It was awesome. You know, I mean, you get for someone who's a little self-centered, as most, I think, actors have to have a little bit of that. You know, it was a great lifestyle. I didn't have to think about other people. I could just have fun, and express myself and use my talents in some ways. And it was pretty, it was amazing. It was a blast. I got to do, a lot of TV shows at the time and soap operas and, do General Hospital and some of the wacky old transitional shows of the day, like Dr. Quinn and Matlock. And I know Matt was asking me about Matlock before, of any kind of weird scenarios. And I do remember that was it was one of my first roles, and I'm doing this as like the bellhop, right? And I walk in on a dead body, and it was like Nia Peoples, who was an up and coming starlet at the time, and so I have to come in and see her dead body and react in horror. And I think my friends later, it's like, yeah, you kind of look like you were just annoyed, you're just like, oh, dang it. Gosh, another dead body I got to clean up. So give me a chance to learn humility and kind of just hone my skills in that. And I got to work on Beverly Hills 90210. Got a lot of people excited. That was one of the things where you learn who your friends are. You find interesting things. You find that men who would never think would do so watched like every episode. They're like, oh yeah, which one were you on? Like, you watched that? I think I only watched my own episode. I don't think I ever watched any of the other ones. And that I had probably the most memorable line of anything I've done, which was, hey, Cheesemeister, stay away from my girl.
If you're going to have one line, memorable line.
That was genius.
It's a good one.
Yeah,
I like it.
And I got to pour water on the head of Jason Priestley like 5 or 6, 7 times, which was... There was some joy in that. But I remember at the audition for that, the writers were so happy with that line that they couldn't stop laughing through my audition of it and be like, hey, gee, and I'm like, Ted, that's an awesome line, man. You did good. So, yeah. Anyway, that was, things were going pretty well. I was feeling pretty good about myself, getting more roles. I was kind of like the token yuppie white guy in a lot of like urban films. I was in like Higher Learning. I was in a Kid and Play movie, which was basically their third house party movie. And oddly enough, like how Catholicism or the Catholic Church kind of kept like poking its way in a little bit. And that was one of them. So I had to be this Latin student, and I had to come up with my own Latin for it, right? Just improv it. You can do that. You're an actor. Improv it. So I'm thinking like, I don't know Latin. So I lived in an apartment building right next to St. Charles Borromeo Church out in Los Angeles. And so one evening I go and I knock on the door. I'm like, the buzzing is like, what? And I said, yeah, Father, I need some help, And so he comes out thinking like I need confession or, I have an addiction or something. I'm like, yeah, actually I'm an actor and I need to learn Latin. Can you teach me some Latin?
So I go to this priest
for Latin. Yeah. So I came up with Laudate, Deo, whatever. A lot of Laudates in there, and it didn't fit so well in that, but it was pretty funny. And then I think a real pivotal part came when, and I was feeling real good about myself. Right, I'm starting to do more and more, and I do a film called Waiting to Exhale, and it was kind of a forgive the phrase, but a chick flick. Okay, so I play a fireman in that thing, so I got to wear like I grew out like I couldn't do a mustache alone because it was just humiliating for me, right? So I do a goatee, and then right when I got there, I shave it in this big geeky mustache for me, and so I have this scene there, and everything's just going great. I'm flying first class, and from California to Arizona is kind of a letdown because you get that first drink, and then you got to, give it back because you're now landing. Right. So right at the end of this, as I'm getting ready to go home, I hear that my dad has been diagnosed with cancer, so non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. So that plane ride back was really rough. It was a lot of just kind of like come to reality.
Right.
scenario. And I also, the other come to reality was I couldn't live any longer with that mustache. So, like, seriously, I got in that little tiny bathroom with a razor, and I'm like shaving my mustache off, right? And in pain, my dad's, suffering and sick, and I'm worried about my mustache, so I'm shaving that bad boy off before I even touched down. And that was probably one of the first like real pivots in my life, which kind of, looking back, you see where it kind of shapes you. And I think, service as a deacon, that's what we are. A deacon is one who serves, the diaconia. And I kind of saw this thread as I look back, and I was at a point, what do we do? So my dad was struggling a little bit. The only ones at the house at that time were my stepmother and my stepsister, and he was a big guy, he's a football player or football or soccer, right? And they were starting to struggle with should he fall, could they get him up and all. So I discerned, prayed about it. Actually, one of those times where I really actively prayed and just felt this obvious solution was that I was going to go in, I was going to move in with them. Just gave up my apartment, put everything in storage, and I was just going to do it. It just seemed like the right thing to do. I had some people like, "What are you doing? Like, you're throwing your life away." I'm like, "Are you kidding me? It's my dad." Like,
right.
So
you have this point that draws you back to your dad and calls you to prayer. But what was your faith at throughout this time? Was it?
It was a little fluctuating. Okay. So I had moments of kind of going away, but then I had some moments of trying. So I had some friends that were, one particularly was an ex-Catholic, and we would go together to these non-denominational churches. Occasionally I go to my Bel Air Presbyterian, but we go to non-denominational, and it was real interesting because quite often it would be focus on a very charismatic preacher. I mean, good men, good people. And quite often, like, for example, one would be, he's like, British with this cool accent, and he's like an ex-roadie from AC/DC, and so everybody's like, oh, he's amazing, and then they get in an argument, and half of the congregation would leave with him, and they'd form another, and half would stay, and now you're in another like gymnasium at a school, and now it's called Sanctuary. So it just felt like, as I looked back, or as I was kind of pondering what was going on, I was thinking, like, these just feel like stepping stone churches to me. And no offense to them, because they were doing such good for letting people know that they are loved, that they are welcomed into the faith. But for those who have been there, or have been faithful for, or had God in their life for most of their life, it was kind of like there was no holding you accountable. There was nothing that you were called to do other than just be welcoming, and I just felt like there's got to be more to that. Right. God's calling me to a life a little bit more disciplined than just God welcomes us all, everything's great.
Yeah.
So that was kind of my faith life at the time, and it just continued to kind of change. But right along that time, my dad was getting worse and worse. So he probably lasted about 8 months, maybe, and he passed, and that was pretty rough. Yeah. But we all decided we were going to all go as a family to Scotland, to Inverness, which is one of his favorite places in the world, and he was played soccer for their soccer team up in Inverness, and so we all went, we all met. And we were going to have a memorial for him up there. And it was real cool, because in those days they had these soccer clubs, kind of like rugby clubs. And you'd go, and it was a lounge, and they had a bar and all that. There's just one picture up there, and it's my dad's team from like the 50s. And there's Big Bub, up there like this. And it was his writing that listed all the players. I was the only one up there. It was just amazing. And I'd just be like, hey, did you know, Bob Galloway? And they're like, oh, Big Bob, I knew Bob, and it was just great. And I had at that time, had kind of gotten away from acting. So when I moved in, I kind of stopped, put it on pause. And to keep me active with my, personality, if you will, I knew I had to do something, on my off time. So I started studying sign language to be an interpreter. So during that time, I was like going off to, LA Trade Tech or something and interpreting. I was horrible, but I had this just desire to, like, you can throw me in and I'll just do it. I was rough as anything, but it was just, I needed an outlet, and it was an expression. It's a beautiful, beautiful language. American Sign Language. So that was one of the things leading up. So I kind of had given up acting for a while. So now we all are heading to Europe. I just decided to grab my backpack with me and take advantage of this opportunity. It was kind of a clean break in a way. So I just grabbed my backpack. I'm getting like the Let's Go Europe book, right? I've got everything planned out. And so we all go to Scotland, and we were kind of that ugly American family, My step family's like, are there any English muffins here? And, it was just great. And I was just feeling the life, I'm writing my journal, and I just remember, I grabbed the backpack, and they all go, and I stayed, and I planned to stay there for 6 weeks, and I had it all set out. And I just wanted to, when I got there, I just wanted to stay. So my 6 weeks turned into 6 months, and I stayed in Europe, and I just traveled, and I stayed in Italy for 3 months, and I worked on a farm, on like a B&B olive farm, and I did anything. I did I helped drive people, I bricklayed, I did the gardening, whatever they needed, I did, and it was just a really freeing feeling to be able to do that, and also just again, like seeing God in His creation and nature. And if you've been to Italy, if anybody's been to Italy, it's so vast and just beautiful in such a different way than other countries in Europe. And it was just it was an amazing experience. I had another Catholic involvement where I'm, it's the middle of the day, it's hot, most people are going inside, and in a little Italian town, this was in like Florence area or Tuscany. So there's the farm ladies, they're doing all the work. So these ladies are tough as nails. They've got like the pole with the stuff on it, and they're just walking, and all the men are like dressed perfectly, and they're at the the cafe drinking cappuccinos while the women are doing all the work. Sorry, but it was just the way it was. And so I'm following this woman up the hill. I was told I wanted to go to church, and I was told to go up there, and it's a Catholic church, and I'd never really been in one. I'd never gone to Mass. So that was my first Mass in Italian. I had no idea what was going on. I knew like Grazie a Dio, and I could tell the Lord's Prayer, and I kind of knew a little bit. And later looking back, thinking about that structure, there's something really amazing about that, and universal, obviously.
Right.
And that was one of my other just kind of the flavors. And then obviously going to Rome a little bit, and I got to like pick up and drive people. I acted as driver and drove these people. This is how I ended up staying longer. So I drove these people up to Switzerland because they didn't want to drive each other. They were driving each other nuts, so I drove them. And then I made my way to Germany, and I had friends in Germany. And then from there, I met a friend of theirs who did antiques, and he refinished. His name is Nigel, right? And he was like, this is from Suffolk. And he's like, hello, mate. And he would refinish antiques and sell them to all the American military wives, and they had some extra cash, and they loved beautiful things, and this was just great, so I would help him refinish. And so I did that all over Europe for a while, and I went and stayed in Suffolk, England for a while, and got to see all my relatives again. So it was just like any new opportunity, I was just jumping at, and it was, it was just quite an amazing time in my life to do that.
So we need to take a break, but yeah, what an amazing touch point in your life. And it also reminds me, earlier you mentioned of having that experience, was it camp or something like that? But this experience of God's abundance in nature, of seeing the countryside, of having that sort of almost like pre-logical experience of God's paternity there, His generosity.
Yeah, and you also, God and nature, and using that as one of the proofs of God, is just, you just realize, the design, and just how can something so beautiful exist by accident.
Well, we'll be back in a couple minutes, and we'll pick up there, and you can talk about how some of that played out and
Fantastic.
What the next steps were. We're talking tonight with Deacon Graham Galloway. He's a former Presbyterian. We're going to finish his story here in a minute. I want to remind you, if you have a story to tell, if you are someone who's come home to the Catholic Church, we'd love to hear it. So go to chnetwork.org. We'd love to hear your story. Send it over. We'd love to connect with you. So we'll be back in a minute to finish Deacon Graham Galloway's story. See you then. Welcome back to the Journey Home program for this second half of the hour. We're speaking tonight with Deacon Graham Galloway. He's a former Presbyterian, now a permanent deacon for the Archdiocese of Cincinnati. And when we left off, you'd been on this whirlwind European
European tour.
Amazing,
Yes,
but
pretty much.
Which again, 2 touch points you mentioned. Again, it kind of faced you with the grandeur of God's creation.
Yes,
so
sir.
that was something in your heart
Yeah.
there. But also, you did have another experience of sort of a run-in with the Catholic Church.
Yeah, it's just funny. Like I think some of the things in my life, the theme that I will tell you in my life is service, which ends up in an odd place where I am today, but also just this this willingness to say yes. Yeah. Change is something I'm just used to, so it's not that crazy for me to go do something like that. So I'm in Europe for 6 months instead of 6 weeks. My family thinks I'm never coming back. They're scared to death. Like, are you going to live in Europe for the rest of your life? What are you doing? That kind of a thing. So in a weird way, circumstances kind of affected me again as far as service. So as I'm coming back home and I'm talking with my family, my sister tells me that my brother-in-law, her husband, is diagnosed with cancer. And he has the same cancer that his mom had died of. And so as I got home, I've find a place finally. So I've got this apartment now by the beach again. I'm feeling really good, and things aren't going well for them. And she had 2 young. My nephews were, probably like just over 5, one under 5 and one just over 5. And it was getting a little difficult for her, and she really wanted to spend more time with him, and she had a full-time job, and so I again just went to God in prayer, and discernment seems to be a common thread for me, and I just thought, how do you want me to be a part of this? How can I help? And so I just I called her up and I said, hey, look, I want to propose this to you. I'm going to come up and just stay with you. And let you go minister to your husband, take care of him. And she was, of course, at first like, oh, you don't have to do that. But, gratefully, she was super thankful. So I came up, I put everything in my little convertible, and I'm like driving up the coast, from California to Bellingham, Washington, which is another kind of, total different culture shock, little fishing town, everybody's in Birkenstocks and all that. So I get there, and these were the same ones. They'd take me in when I was running away from home, and Gary was just such a good man. And my I think goal was to bring joy, to help bring joy and take away from that situation and for the kids. And so I was just trying to keep them entertained. And one of the things I did at the time was, my buddies got me hooked on the Gypsy Kings. Remember the Gypsy Kings? So I'm there, and it's just like, I just turned it on and just started dancing to it and just blast it. And it became a thing. And so then all of a sudden it'd be like, Mama Leo, right? And all these kids come running in, sliding from one direction, and we just do the dumbest dance ever. But it was just a way of just like, taking our minds off the seriousness and the toughness on that. And I didn't want to be a burden, so I decided I was going to get a job. So I'm up there in Bellingham, Washington. I don't know what skills I had, but I ended up taking a job as a roofer. So I've got this temporary job as a roofer. I'm up in the roofs of like church buildings and things, and I'm really deathly afraid of heights. So it was just, what was I thinking? And I really wanted to just not be a burden. So while she was with him, I could go do that. And then I could come back, that evening. And it was one of those points that just really kind of hit home about how we are there to serve one another. And I remember I'm sitting with these guys, and they're guys, right? We're on roofs, and they're all tough and rough. And we're sitting there all having lunch one time, and they were just kind of really interested in my story and really interested about, why you're doing this, what are you thinking? Like, why would you do that? Why would you give up that to do this? And then one of the guys, this burly dude, he's like, starts tearing up. He's like, dude, I just love you, man. I just love you. You're just awesome. And it just, it's just one of those humbling moments where I just thought, wow, this is just, I'm meant to be here. I'm just trying to follow God's will in my life. And I think another theme in my life is just trying to get out of my own way and let God do the work. So, my brother-in-law passed, and I came home, and right before that, another Catholic touch point, my sister gave me a rosary that I think was his sister's. I'm not sure if she was Catholic, but gave to him while he was sick. And so she said, I don't know, but I just feel like you would want this, or you should have this. So I got this rosary. I'm not Catholic. I don't even know what a rosary is at the time. And it just meant so much to me at that time. And so I get back home. It's like starting over again with everything, with my faith life, with acting, because now it's like starting over. No one remembered me. I have to like kind of reintroduce myself. So I started doing a lot more plays. I started getting involved with theater workshops, and I knew a lot of playwrights and writers, and they would actually put me in stuff. They'd write roles for me, and I would perform them. And I'm just thinking like, this isn't it. I'm not excited about it. It's not really touching my heart anymore. And some of the stuff was just like, ugh, been there. So there was that period where I'm really starting to reflect on what's important to me. And so I had a buddy. He was my next door neighbor. His name was Rick, and we called him Ricker Man, which should tell you everything you need to know about Ricker Man. So Rick's from South Dakota, and he called me Gray Ham. So I was with Gray Ham. He said, Graham, and we just talk about everything, faith and relationships, women, he's like, we're never going to find a woman here to get married to, a nice, I'm thinking like, yeah. And so we both agreed that the only place we'd have to find like a nice Midwest, young woman to get married to. Funny how you like give it up to God, say, I'm going to step out. Like I wasn't dating. I've been dating for like 3 years. And it's just like, God, it's all yours, I'm not even going to try anymore. And sure enough, so I get cast in an independent film. And so I get flown out to like Cincinnati and Kentucky, a place called Florence, Kentucky. Florence, y'all, is what it's known as. And doing this film. And so I meet my future wife, was working in the crew at the time. And, real sweet and it was great. And so go back home. And she ends up going out to work at Paramount Pictures because she was going to go take Hollywood by storm until she got there and she realized she hated Hollywood, just hated everything about it. So we rekindled our friendship, fell in love, and we were planning to get married. So we got married in Cincinnati at her home parish, and then lived out in Venice Beach, California for a year. It was real cool. It was like 10 blocks from the beach. You've got Julia Roberts, 5 blocks down. You got one of the new kids who was down there, and she would like rollerblade by there every once in a while, trying to check out if he was there. And but she just hated it. And we would go to church. So we go to St. Monica out there in Santa Monica, California, and then we go to like My Presbyterian or maybe a non-denominational. So I go to a Catholic church and I would just be like, what in the world is this? This is like the most boring thing I've ever been to. The homilies just be like, right? And then she'd come to my church and she'd be just like digging her nails in my hands because she's like, this is heresy. This is a cult. This is crazy. Like, God forbid there's like liturgical dance or something, which I'm going to bring back.
Okay.
No. So we had that kind of dual thing going, and we eventually moved back to Cincinnati. Her whole family's there. And we just realized, Venice Beach, California is cool, but it's not a great place to raise a family. And our values were a little different from that culture. So we're in Cincinnati. I had no job, no house, nothing. I got involved in radio. So I go to radio sales because that was kind of my background in college. So we had a job, we find a place, we're living out in the burbs, everybody's got 2 dogs and, 2 kids, 2 dogs and a basketball hoop. And we sign up for become members of her parish. I'd agreed to be married in the Catholic faith. That was fine by me, and I was content to just sit back in the pew during communion and she could go up for the Eucharist and I'll just sit here. I was fine. I didn't have anything against the Catholic faith. It was just like something foreign. Right. It'd be like, how would you like to learn like Portuguese architecture, Venezuelan basket weaving? And be like, yeah, I know nothing about that. Right. So I was content with that. But this is when, you talk about those moments. This is probably the biggest pivotal point in my whole life. I get a call. So we've been going there for a few years. I get a call, and it's from a guy named Jeff. And Jeff, good man in the church, in a lot of ministries. And so he was calling for something called Christ Renews His Parish. It's a retreat, CHIRP.
Right.
So he calls me up. So Saturday, I pick up the phone, like, hey, Jeff, don't know who you are, but yeah, cool. You know what? And he's like, hey, I want to invite you to this retreat. And I'm like, okay, sure. What, tells me about it. And it's just going through one ear. And I hang up, and my wife says, like, who is that? And I said, a guy named Jeff from the church. Oh, why'd he call? And so he's inviting me to something on the weekend. What is it? Can't remember. He was like, well, what are you going to do? I'm not sure. Something to do with, like, God and, retreat, should be cool, fellowship. She's like, oh, you should do it. And I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna. So I do that, not knowing what I'm doing, what it is. And what a great turning point, because here's a guy just showing the importance of invitation.
Right.
Right? He's just inviting someone. It's just like, and that's what we're all called to do. And how often do we do that, as followers of Christ? Just invite them. So he invited me to do this. I do this, and it was just an incredible moment. And I realized right then that I needed God in my life. And there was that hole, that God-sized hole that maybe Augustine talked about. And I'm just feeling that lack, and I started to really pray. I'm learning Lectio Divina, right? And I'm learning all these, ways to really try and get closer with God and invite Him into my life. So one of the cool things, I think my mom wrote me a letter at that time, just saying, hey, I'm proud of you for doing this. Our faith is really important. And I think she was like a little worried that I was going to become Catholic. So she writes in, of course, like about how proud she is of her, Presbyterian faith and how what a blessing, right? I'm thinking, you couldn't resist, Mom. You couldn't resist. So I go through this, and I remember specifically, and at this point I had moved from radio sales to working with car dealerships in sales, helping them with their advertising, marketing, and that's something I've been involved with all my life. And nothing against car dealers. There's some great car dealers out there, right?
Yeah,
and people in car business. There's a lot of people who aren't so great. And there are times when I come home and I just feel like I need a shower. I'm just like, blah. So I'm praying like, God, I just feel like this is great. There's nothing wrong with making a living or helping people with their business and making it more profitable, or even providing just for your family. And that's the only, that's all your job is. It's fine. But I just felt like, Lord, there's got to be more for me waking up in the morning. I want to feel like, I can't wait to do this. I'm blessed to do this. And I wasn't feeling that at all. It was the opposite. And, God, please help me. And that was something that ended up, being a thread in my life, but it was a long time coming. And that's another thing that really is clear to me is God's timing is not our timing.
Right.
God's got His plan for us, and it's not to you like look back. Mm-hmm. Have you ever kept like a journal, like a prayer journal? Yes. So those can be so helpful in looking back and thinking, wow, I can't remember, that prayer was answered. That prayer wasn't answered or the way I wanted. Thank the Lord that wasn't. And that was the case for me. So for like 10 years, I'm thinking, what is wrong with me? God, am I asking the wrong question? Am I being selfish? Should I just be happy with what I'm doing? Or am I an idiot? Like, God, am I just stupid and I can't hear you? Am I just tone deaf? Are you giving me an answer and I just don't see it? Am I that guy at the side of the road waiting for God to show up? And I'm like, here comes a helicopter, here comes a motorcycle, right? And it's like, God will be here, right? Is that it? And it wasn't until later that I realized, looking back, like, God's got a plan for all of us. God's got a plan for me for sure. And again, it's just me getting out of my way and trying to be faithful. Is becoming Catholic, becoming a deacon was not something I ever thought of. So it was then where all of a sudden, I'm just getting really frustrated and frustrated that my prayers don't seem to be answered. And on a whim, I like reach out through like LinkedIn or something about this job at Franciscan Media. And I knew nothing about them. They're just not far from where I am, downtown Cincinnati. And they needed a salesperson for St. Anthony Messenger magazine. So I just shot back, and they're like, boom, next day I've got an interview, right? We go down, everything's amazing, and it's just like everything was falling in place. Where prior to that, like, I'd see this opportunity I thought was amazing, and it might be in the car business, and they'd fly me out to Detroit, they'd fly me out to LA, and everything's great, and then last minute something happens. And I'm thinking, like, what is it? What am I doing wrong? And I look back and I think, had I got those, I wouldn't be where I am today. So thank you, God, for not giving me what I wanted at that and giving me what I needed, what you want for me. So I take this job, and I'm working with Franciscans, for the first time. I know nothing about Francis. I know nothing about the orders. Just prior to that, and I think I kind of skipped a tiny bit, but just prior to that, here I am getting involved in ministries at the church, and I was finally brought into a father's team, right? Some of the guys from church, like, you gotta go to this father's team. Every Friday morning at 6:03, we get up and we pray and we fellowship and we pray for each other, and we pray to be better fathers and better sons and better friends, right?
Awesome.
And husbands. And so I go to this, and then the Holy Spirit's just working on me, just at every angle. And I've got guys coming up. It's like, hey, and again, invitation. Hey, would you mind like going out? Let's just go grab some coffee. I'd love to tell you my story. I'm like, sure, whatever. I'm a social guy. I'll do it. So I go, and then it'll leave me like, hey, here's a CD just in case. It's kind of cool. It's Rome Sweet Home by Scott Hahn. I'm like, I know exactly what you're doing here, buddy. Like, yeah, I know what this is. I know who he is. We're good. I'm not going to become Catholic. And then it just kept happening, and God just kept reminding me. So I'm out. I'm painting our interior living room of the house, and I've got this tape. Might as well listen to it. So I've got this tape going on. Here's Scott and Kimberly Hahn talking about his conversion, and my wife comes down the stairs, and she sees me, and she listens. She's like listening to it. And she slowly goes back up the stairs, and she comes back down backwards. She's like, are you planning to become Catholic? I'm like, no, I'm just doing my friend a favor. That's all I'm doing. And then it got silly. It just got to the point, like, what am I holding back for? What have I got to lose? I can always say no. I can go, and I realized I knew nothing about my faith. So I went through the RCIA program, which was just
You're working
amazing.
with Franciscan at this point.
This is where this is just before Franciscan, just before. Okay. And so I'm working. I'm going through RCIA, and it's funny how like all of a sudden a switch turns on when you decide to become Catholic. I don't know if anybody else experiences this. All right, so immediately after, like that first week, I go to, and I'm working with a car dealer, a small car dealership, and I've got the husband and wife out, and their faith came in, right? And they're happy young Christians, and they're talking about this amazing experience in London with this amazing, pastor, and he's like just filled with joy and drunk with the Spirit, right? So I'm like, that's great. Hey, I just started this program for initiation in the Catholic faith. And then I just saw, like, you can just see it in their eyes, right? This like fear kind of comes back, and there's like a little ding, like horns going off in the back of their head. You can just see like red lights flashing, and they look at me and each other, and then they kind of, oh, great, and they go back in, they pull out a Bible. And this Bible's got like sticky notes and, colors of all kinds and everything, and they pull it out. And now all of a sudden we're in this conversation about how, Catholics only believe in works, you have to work your way to salvation and all that. And this is why it's wrong. And, I'm saying, hey, I'm learning, about a lot of this. So this is kind of exciting. I'm looking forward to talking to you about this. And I said something about, we're all broken, we're all sinners. And like, oh no. Once you invite God into your life, you're forgiven. You can no longer sin. Excuse me? Like, what? Like, yeah, no, you are incapable of sin. Again, once you've got Christ inside of you, he can't let you sin. I'm like, okay, that doesn't really make a lot of sense to me because, if you talk Matthew or the sheep and the goats, they both called him Lord, yet,
right.
By your works, right? Like,
and you tried.
Yeah, but then out comes another lit verse, and I said, well, then what about all the letters of Paul? To the churches and saying you're messing up, right? So it was funny. It was just, and I came back like the next night to my RCIA. I'm like, hey, I got evangelized. This is cool. But it was, and I was scared to death of my mom, how she would react. Proud Presbyterian. So I actually said, hey, Mom, I just got back, got my suit on. I'm walking inside. I just sit in front of my garage door. And I'm sitting on the cement. I look like an idiot. I'm out there in front of my house, like sitting there. Mom, I just need you to listen. I just need you to listen. Then you can tell me whatever you want. All right, and I went through it. Okay, and so I told her what was going on. I'm now entering the Catholic faith. Big pause. I was thinking, oh, great. She says, yeah, I figured you would. Your kids are Catholic, your wife's Catholic. I figured. I just figured you'd wait till I was dead. So she said, and later she said, like, yeah, I'm not, I have nothing against the Catholic faith other than it's, a man-made religion by men for men. Like, oh, great. Hey, Mom, we're gonna have great conversations. I can't wait to talk about this. We never talked about that again. She never brought it up. She never brought up any disagreements. She only just supported me and just told me how proud she was that I was entering the faith. And involved with my kids.
Well, we got about 3 minutes left. So,
yeah,
from there, you do become Catholic and you end up a deacon.
And then I became a deacon.
Take us the rest of the way home there. Yeah.
You bet. So, so now I'm involved in my faith, and that at that point I had just about started, I think, at the Franciscan Media, and I was going to a noon mass with a family, and we're getting up. Right after that, a wife of one of our deacons comes over. It's like, hey, I was looking at you at Mass, and I just got this feeling. And I walked away, heard again, came back. Have you ever thought about being a deacon? And I said, that's really funny, because you're like the fifth person who's told me that in 2 weeks. And she said, really? Then you should pray about it. And I thought, okay. I will, thanks. And so I'm thinking about it, with my wife on the way home, like, isn't that funny? And Marcia's like, yeah, I just looked it up. So this is what a deacon is, what a deacon does, I'm like, whoa. I'm not, I can't even get my head wrapped around it. And then the same thing happened, like going into the Catholic faith. It was just hit me on all sides. And to the point of, why not? What have I got to lose? God's obviously pushing me here. So I 5 years of formation in that. So I'd only been, I think, a Catholic for a few years, and then, and suddenly I'm going into formation as a deacon, and it's just like, what am I doing? I'm just following God's lead. It wasn't my plan. I don't want to be up there, helping Father up there. It's not my goal. But I found myself there. You're here to serve.
Right.
And one of the most amazing experiences, and then involving, my family with the seminarians, getting to make these great relationships with these young priests. I mean, what a blessing to get them, involved with your kids. I'd recommend that to anybody, that and teach your kids how to pray.
Okay.
Working at Franciscan Media, I'd been working or knew the people downtown at the Archdiocese of Cincinnati, and they kind of recruited me over. They were filling in a position for their team for the Catholic Telegraph newspaper, which is a magazine. So they wanted that transition. So I was part of putting the final pieces in that, and been working there for about 2.5 years. Now, waking up in the morning, it's like, thank you, Lord. Mm-hmm. I don't have that sinking feeling of, I don't know why am I doing this? I know exactly why I'm doing this. I'm grateful. I'm so humbled to be doing this. Like, what a blessing to be able to, I would have never thought. Now I'm working at the Archdiocese. I'm a Catholic. I'm a deacon. So that just blows my mind. I had a friend from Switzerland during my European tour who had texted me at one point. She's like, so you went from an actor to a priest? Like, whoa. Yeah, not a priest. But yeah, I mean, just it was kind of mind-blowing to think that. And now I'm just so grateful to just be able to be with people. Yeah. Just to share and just be there with people in their journey and their encounter. And that's where I think that God's just got me.
Yeah.
I'm not there to be a theologian. Of course, I'm not there to be the best, preacher in the world. I'm there to be, just present with people and, having that encounter and through that, letting them have that encounter.
Yeah.
So that was my whirlwind too. Yeah, now I'm a deacon.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate the story
it.
so much, and I love the theme. Again, you touched on it so many places, and you talked about it there. This theme of feeling a call to service, but continually being open to God. What do you want me to do? I mean, it kind of boils down the Christian life pretty simply there. Like, we come to know Christ, and then we keep asking, Lord, what do you want of me? What's the next step? What's the next step? And He leads us. Sometimes the route is crazy.
Holy cow!
But He leads us.
Yeah, and what a great question to ask God. Like, what the old Matthew Kelly, yes or yes. What do you want me to do,
Right.
God?
Right.
As opposed to the wish list, like our first bit of the prayers. God, give me this, give me this. Where the Lord's Prayer reverses that. It's all
Right.
about God first.
Right. Well, I have so many more questions I want to
Oh,
ask
my
you.
goodness.
We've out of time here.
Yeah.
We'll follow up. Thank you for your story. We'll follow up, and if people check out chnetwork.org, we'll have some short videos where I follow up with some of the. I want to ask you about acting and service and this theme of asking God His will, but we have to conclude for now. But thank you so much for sharing your story.
Thank you. What a pleasure.
And for your service now as a deacon at the church. And thank you for joining us for this episode of the Journey Home program. I know that Deacon Graham's story is an inspiration to you, but again, please share it. If you check out chnetwork.org, you'll find his journey as well as so many other stories that you can share that might touch somebody else's life. So we encourage you to do that. Again, thank you for joining us for this episode. God bless you. We'll talk to you again next week.